Mother Miranda, I regret to inform you that Ethan Winters has escaped that fool Heisenberg. Because he is in my castle and has already proven too much for my daughters to handle. When I find him... No, Mother Miranda. Yes, of course, I understand the importance of the ceremony. I won't let you down.
If you follow my channel, then you know it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of the Resident Evil franchise. Collecting for the franchise is really what got me into game collecting as a whole. I've loved it ever since I first played it in middle school, through high school. Every new entry I had to get on day one. It's just a series that I fell in love with. Resident Evil 2 is still one of my favorite games of all time. This year, the franchise is celebrating 25 years of just bringing us this survival horror goodness. And what better way to top off this celebration than to give us a brand new entry into the series. Resident Evil Village is the 10th entry in the mainline series of the long-running franchise. This story picks up 3 years after the events of Resident Evil 7. We are once again taking the reins as Ethan Winters, as he's in search of his missing daughter Rose, who was kidnapped by none other than Resident Evil mainstay Chris Redfield. If that's not enough, Chris also shoots and kills Ethan's wife Mia, the woman we fought so hard to save and protect in Resident Evil 7. This gut punch all happens within the first few minutes of starting the game, and it doesn't let up from there. As Ethan, you explore the cold, dark, dreary, snowy European countryside in search of Rose and to answers why she was even taken in the first place. The initial area you start at is the village, whose inhabitants give praise and worship to Mother Miranda. They look to her for safety and protection, but something's wrong with this village. It's not safe. It's actually being attacked and overrun by Lycans. So her protection is not working very well. Along your journey, you will encounter other areas that branch off from the village, letting the village kind of act like this central hub area that you come back to. I actually really enjoyed this from a design and gameplay perspective. In true Resident Evil fashion, you'll explore these areas kind of like you did back in the old games. You might run into a door in the village that you need a certain key to unlock, and turns out that key is nowhere in the village anywhere. You might have to find it in one of those extra areas that you venture off to later in the game. Then you come back to, and you can just explore the village even further and get back to that door. So it allows you to go back and forth and uncover further mysteries in the village, and it makes it feel like every trip back to the village kind of leads you to exploring a new part of it and just discovering something, and that feeling of opening and getting access to a room that you've been waiting a couple hours in the game to get to. It feels kind of rewarding just to see like what's hiding behind this door. And that's something that I felt was missing in a lot of the newer entries to Resident Evil. Resident Evil 7 kind of brought it back. But I thought 8 did a great job in kind of getting Resident Evil back to its roots, that Metroidvania survival horror experience.
Out of the house?
No, friendly, friendly.
Who are you? Who sent you?
Nobody. There was an accident down the road and... What's going on?
And that's just one of the things that really draws me to the Resident Evil series. It's that back and forth style exploration. And there was a point in the series where the game developers, like I said, started to steer away from that in the later entries in 4, 5, and 6. They're all pretty linear. 7 started to bring it back in some smaller ways, but Village just does a great job of bringing it back to the roots of exploration and discovery. And that's what the series excelled at when it was in its early days, its early entries. And while it still plays great with this first-person perspective, and it makes for some nice camera angles, you know, getting those up-close attacks from bosses and enemies, I really prefer the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes of the third person over the shoulder kind of camera style. With that camera, you could kind of at least incorporate some old school nostalgia that you could present some pre-rendered backgrounds or just static areas to explore if you wanted to in the game. With the FPS format, you're kind of locked out from being able to do that. But if the FPS versions are what we get from here on out, and that's the future of the franchise, I am not going to lose any sleep over it because I still enjoy it playing it in that way as well. I would just prefer the third person over the shoulder. If anything, the first person perspective really enhanced, like I said, boss battles. So those are some of the best in the series to date, hands down. I really enjoyed the boss battles in this game. And since I am fully on board with owning an Oculus Quest 2 now and being able to play VR, I want nothing more than to play Resident Evil Village in VR. I wish it would have came at launch with it, or they would have done that. I don't know how Village or Resident Evil 7 was accepted with that kind of VR style. I thought people really praised it on the PlayStation. I didn't get to experience that. I really wish they had it this time because, man, I would have bought it on PC and would have dove head in to exploring in VR. But maybe that's something they could do in the future. And I know we're getting Resident Evil 4 remake on the Quest 2, so that'll be a fun playthrough. But, man, this would have been a blast to be able to play through in virtual reality. Resident Evil Village also has some crafting elements implemented into the game. Feeling short on some ammunition and have the materials for it, boom, craft some up. Low on some healing items, you can craft that as well. And it's a really simple system to use, just some basic ingredients to craft out some stuff you need if you're in a pinch. I never found myself really needing to craft anything unless I was playing in the hardcore mode. Then there was some times where I use some healing items to craft, but ammo and stuff like that was never really an issue. Mainly because I was playing with the infinite ammo gun on the hardcore mode, and it was a blast. Now, I'm no big graphics snob or anything like that, and it doesn't take much to impress me as far as visuals, but there is no beating around the bush. Resident Evil Village looks incredible. The RE engine has just been shining brightly ever since they used it since Resident Evil 7 and until now. Just the power of the new consoles, this next generation power, and the power that PCs are getting with the new graphics cards that have come out today, Village just really took advantage of it. The game actually opens up with Rose sitting in your arms, your child, and it is hands down one of the best looking, forget babies in a game, just people in general that I've just ever seen in a game. The visual animations and expressions, it was jaw-dropping. Enemies, like the Lycans, they just look vicious, especially when they are chomping down on your neck and you see blood spraying in your face from that first-person perspective. The areas look cold and dreary, dark and damp, and they have this atmosphere of just dread and danger manifested by the visuals of these random, run-down homes with blood trails leading through the homes and through the doors, over furniture on walls. And again, just facial animations, even from bosses and enemies, they're just top notch, and they are highlighted by some of those close encounters with the bosses. One issue I did run into though was with the HDR, the high dynamic range. I'm new to being able to play games in 4K and HDR with this next generation of the new generation of consoles that have released. And with my new upgraded PC being able to power it, I have a 3070 in there, and I can now take full advantage of just these next-gen graphics. And even bought a new monitor at the beginning of the year to kind of take advantage of this. And don't get me wrong, like, Village looked great while playing it in HDR. But there was one big issue. It was just too dark. I could not see in the game. Even with the adjustments I made with the sliders in the HDR settings, I just could not get it bright enough to where I could really see to play the game comfortably. And there could be an item on the ground, and I'm getting this prompt to pick it up, and I could not see what I'm picking up. When I opened the drawers to the kitchen sinks or cabinets, I could not see into the cabinets just because of the way the lighting and everything was it just did not give me see enough light to see. So I ultimately had to play through the game with the HDR turned off. But again, this took nothing away from the visuals. It still looked great. And when I go through to play it again on the Village of Shadows difficulty, I'm gonna put the HDR on in some of the later scenarios of the game just to see if there's a difference in there too. So please just let me know if you have any advice on anything else I could try that I might be missing out on there, or maybe if you've had issues yourself. Either way, the game still looked gorgeous. It looked incredible. While not boasting the amazing soundtrack that the original trio of games brought us, Village does do a great job at highlighting that less can sometimes mean more. And what I mean by that is the game doesn't really have music playing throughout the game in the backgrounds like it would in Resident Evil 2 when you're in the police halls and stuff like that, or in the save room. It just has this ambient sound kind of behind it, and it really highlights just the sound effects in the game that your character is doing while you're moving. It really keeps your attention focused on your surroundings. You kind of get used to, for example, walking through a field with some grass in it. So you're hearing your body rustle through the grass, but then your senses pick up on another sound of grass moving further ahead. So it kind of heightens your senses by just really diving in and hearing the sound effects. And it does a great job at highlighting that, because it really makes for some tense moments where you're focused in on hearing and listening because it's so quiet. And at any moment, you might hear something that can alert you or startle you, give you that little jump scare, or just it keeps you on your toes. So it's pretty incredible how that kind of works out. As far as weapons, they sound solid, but I could always do with some more bass and boom and some of the bigger guns like a shotgun or the launchers and stuff like that. So, but again, they serve their purpose and it does a good job. Voice acting again is something that I'm not really ever picky on in any game, and the voice acting in Village is more than serviceable to me, and it never hindered my enjoyment or anything with the game. I thought it was fine. There was a point there where the Resident Evil series, especially with 5 and 6, I thought was really losing direction. And the developers came out and said, they were going for that more action-heavy approach in those games because that's what was selling. But I'm really glad to see that they kind of went back to their roots with 7. And here in Resident Evil Village, they just hit a home run with it, far superior than what they did in 7. This is hands down the better game to me over Resident Evil 7, even though that was a great game in itself. But I really enjoyed my time with this game, just to show you how much I enjoyed it. I never replay games that often, and when I do, it's normally months or years later when I go to revisit it. Right when I finished Resident Evil Village the first time, I immediately booted up a second playthrough to play it again. That's how much I enjoyed it. So I've already beaten it twice, and I again want to go back and do it a third time on the hardest difficulty. And that's stuff I never do. So I think that's a true testament to the game and what it did and what it means to me. And even though it doesn't have the classic characters that I enjoy, such as Leon and Claire from some of the original games, Ethan Winters never really bothered me. He holds his own in the last 2. It's cool that they put Chris in there to kind of bridge the gap in the franchise, and I'm really excited to see where the game goes from here. It leaves it open for plenty more down the road, and I can't wait to see where they go and how they take it. Hopefully they keep sticking to their roots here. Get a little bit more scarier, because that is another thing with this game. There weren't very many scary moments, but in Resident Evil, there never truly is. It's just some nice survival horror. Go shoot up some monster goodness. So I really enjoyed it. The settings, the visuals, gameplay, everything about it. I can't recommend it enough. So go and check it out if you guys haven't already. And I hope you enjoyed this review. So just stay tuned for some more in the future, and I'll catch you in the next one.